Department of Biology. It is also attached to the Center for the Study of Biological Diversity. Without further introduction, I should now call Carson to present the seminar.
So, I really apologize for the late start. We're trying to sort some technicalities. Good to see some strange faces after a while. So, the seminar I'm going to give sort of starts off, different, not so different path in terms of my academic career, and perhaps those of others that are linked also. And so, I'm going to talk for about maybe 40 minutes, and then we'll have a session allowed for some questions. I'm hoping that there are a few people that are logged in online, and I'm hoping that they're getting all of it, and if it doesn't work out, anybody finds it interesting enough that they would like to have a view of it later on. We're also doing a video recording that will be later uploaded to YouTube for future reference. So I said for about 40 minutes, we're going to have the presentation and then a session for questions. The presentation will generally follow this outline, looking at the introduction of what we are currently calling the Religion, Science, and Environment Research Group. Then giving a background more specific to the study, which findings have been presented. Looking at the history of environmentalism, because the study is actually very related to what is going on in the realm of the environmental movement and the actions there. And then looking specifically to the apocalypse and the relationship of religion to the apocalypse, or an apocalypse as it's perceived. And then why Guyana is a good study case for this. A bit about the question that we were trying to answer, or hypothesis, the method, what would be very interesting, the findings, and a little bit about the future work we plan to undertake. So, not very strange faces. The current grouping that are working as the Religion, Science, and Environment Research Group are all natural sciences people, and predominantly from the biology department. And Troy Thomas is there with us as a very important person, as a methodologist, a very valuable in also bringing insight to some of the things that we are thinking about. And the idea is about interdisciplinary research. So we all have background except Troy in biology, but we are all interested really in sustainability and developing sustainable livelihoods in terms of human society. So it's really about creating a more sustainable future through this integrated research. We were fortunate enough, I don't see Galvin here, who is the former head of computer science, but we were fortunate enough to have the people at the university have a little site, one single page on the UG website there, when we were doing the survey. And we begged to keep it alive, so we're going to be utilizing that single page for now, putting up bits and pieces there, links and things about what we're doing, and maybe we'll go to something later on. Two of us, myself and Diana's teacher, who's here, are members also of the International Society for the Study of Religion, Nature, and Culture. And this society has very similar interests, and if you're interested in the work of the society, we also publish a journal. You can check it out at the religionandnature.com website. So to come more directly to the study and why is it we're looking at apocalypse? Well, one of the things that's been ringing for a while is the issue of the Mayan calendar saying that the world will end in December 21st, or rather the end of the world will begin, if that registers for you, on December 21st of this year. So we'll see the end of the end, starting out then. And so this is a very ancient piece that the Mayans had carved and they used to since the seasons and times. And it's indicated, based on the interpretations, that the world will come to an end. And the timing of the end is sometime in December. That being considered, the International Society for the Study of Religion, Science, and Nature, when they were holding their conference this year, they had a theme of nature and the public imagination. And they had a particular emphasis on the apocalypse. And that's what actually sparked the idea of sort of jump-starting the research that I began for my sabbatical, and just getting into this issue of the apocalypse, because religion has a significant bearing on our perception of the apocalypse, or an apocalypse if you see it as happening. But before we come back to religion and the apocalypse specifically, I want to talk a bit about environmentalism and the history of environmentalism. And there's a lot of hype in environmentalism these days, and many times you're short-sighted and where it came from. The actual deliberate move to protect something, to value the environment, a record of that is all the way back to the year 1676, when St. Cuthbert was on the Isle of Friend, and he recognized that there were shorebirds there being affected by the actions of the humans that were on the island, and he enacted laws. So this is the actual recorded history of environmentalism started between a religious man trying to protect something in nature. But there are many things that sort of follow on that. And one of the records that is significant from the 20th century, so 1949 publication, it was published after the death of Aldo Leopold, is the Sun Country Almanac, when Aldo Leopold articulated his land ethic, where he was giving value to everything that exists, all that is known in terms of nature, whether it be living and non-living, and he saw value in anything that seeks to preserve that biotic environment, to keep it whole and keep it functioning, was good, and anything that sought to do the opposite was bad. And that was the fundamentals of Leopold's land ethic. And then, several years later, what really got the environmental movement started was the publication of Silent Springs from Rachel Carson. And Rachel Carson brought to the fore these major issues of pollution and the issue of DDT in particular that she was observing in terms of it affecting birds and other animals in their nesting. And if you know the 1960s was that era of political revolution. Everything changed in the 1960s. And so it seemed as though Rachel Carson's publication was quite timely. It had good timing, and so it picked up a lot of traction, and the environmental movement was born. While there was a lot of action before that, it was not as fierce as we saw coming out of the 1960s. 5 years later, there's what I would class as a bit of a contentious piece. And I mentioned this even though the work of Lynn White doesn't have a significant bearing in terms of sparking an environmental movement, so to speak. But Lynn White brought the question of religion and environment to a floor in that he wrote a piece that was called The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis. And he was a historian focusing on the medieval times. And what he basically saw was that he was saying that Christianity during the medieval times was responsible for the state of the environment that he was observing in the 1960s, with all of the industrial revolution that followed and all of these things. And not only was he linking the practice of a religion to the environmental crisis, but he was also claiming that it was the fundamental doctrines of the religion that caused the crisis, that religion itself was an anthropocentric one, and therefore give low value to the environment. Out of all this action that was starting in the 1960s, we find a massive movement was grown that today we have about 55 international NGOs focusing exclusively on the environment. We have about 18 of them operating at a regional level, 258 of them operating at a national level, and many of those operate within the United States. And that's a very interesting fact, because many that have studied the situation in the United States will tell you that environmentalism is dead. That it has been futile and has accomplished very little, if anything at all. The very situation within the United States, we find that when many have studied the population, they find that there's a significant degree of apathy towards the environment. That people are not really engaged, not really concerned about the environment within the US. And it went as far to a politician vying for public office, or who was in public office at the time, being able to get off and making an announcement that a bill that he was taking to the Senate under the guise of being an environmental bill was actually just about economics. And he said it publicly, and he survived politically. At a global scale, we are familiar with the environmental crisis, and if you were paying attention to the news just recently, you're also familiar with the tragedies that are occurring in terms of the attempts to negotiate something better that are failing. 20 years ago, we had Rio. Just a few months ago, we had Rio plus 20. And those commenting on the outcomes of Rio plus 20 generally say it's a failure. And the best thing that has come out of it is that you've got a lot of movement in civil society. So there seems to be a reactivation of the civil society to act on behalf, to force their governments to act on behalf of the environment and to do something positive to turn the tide of time, so to speak. But sustaining what has begun in Rio plus 20 would require a shift from what seems to be a largely apathetic population to one that is more sympathetic to the environment. So the claim now is that activists must understand the forces that influence the attitudes and behaviors in relation to the environment. They must have an understanding of that, because when you understand what is driving people's attitudes and behaviors, then you can manipulate those to ensure that people are driven to act on behalf of the environment. And this is really where religion comes in. A couple of years back, the EPA invited me to speak on in a series they had for International Biodiversity Day, and I sort of gave a lead into this. In order for us to really have a positive move towards sort of a better environment, we need to have masses mobilized, yes, and we can mobilize those masses by looking at the points of influence, and where those points of influence also has responsibilities related to the environment. When we look at what we have as an environmental crisis today, many persons refer to it as being an apocalyptic crisis. And this is the thing that is going to bring us to our doom. One particular study that I can point out highlights the fact that if we take, or if we communicate the environmental crisis as one that is apocalyptic in its dimension, in its ability that can bring us to an end, that it can have sort of a negative feedback towards promoting environmentalism. So they were studying in Australia, studying the population, and what they've been getting in terms of their messages on climate change, so one environmental issue. What they found was that 49% of their 26,000 respondents, 49% of them were dismissive of the whole idea of climate change. They don't want to hear about it, they don't want to be engaged in it, it's just don't bother us about climate change. An additional 9% were either doubtful or just disengaged. So 58% of the people are on the negative side of the scale. And when they looked at it, they claimed that one of the major things driving people away from it is because people had received the message of climate change as an apocalyptic message. It was a message saying that if we don't do something now, next year, or 5 years from now, the earth will collapse. The system on earth will collapse. Things will come to an end. And then when next year comes, or 5 years from now comes, and the earth will collapse, people go, well, what are you telling us? You've been lying, people start to get, well, you know, how do we believe these scientists or these politicians or whoever is trying to put the message over. So when we go, there's a doomsday message, and doomsday doesn't come when you say it's going to come, people sort of step back and say doomsday will never come. And we're just trying to prevent us from making more money. But this issue of an apocalypse is one that has deep roots in religion. There are many predictors, and I'll perhaps skip to those to the bottom. There are many persons and societies that would have predicted an end of the world, and people would have held on to that, and then some of them have passed, and in my calendar is still in place for a few months before December comes up. But we have many religions, that are so-called religions, that are UFO-based, so they believe that one day some UFO is going to come and just take people away and destroy the earth. And then there was the Y2K thing that, you know, when the turn of the millennium was going to happen, you know, computers are going to crash, all your money is going to disappear, or the bank take it out and put it on your pillow, all of these things. That will never happen. Then last year, 2011, the world was supposed to end according to our camping, and we're still here. Somebody asked if you can just donate when you can't buy the words in the end, and didn't do that one. Then we have the Mayan calendar, yeah? But religions, our major religions, have a major play in what we understand about how we perceive an apocalypse when our exists. And religion has a major play globally because, see, this is an analysis from 2005. I believe the website is adherent.com. You want to check it out. They do an assessment of religious adherence across the world. And so they estimated that globally we have 32% Christians, 21% Muslims, people following Islam. We have 14% of persons following Hinduism. And then we have smaller religions, 5% here of indigenous religions. We have about 6% indigenous religion, Chinese traditional religion, 6%, Buddhism, 6%, and then one or two small ones sitting in there, Judaism. 16% say they have no religion. But religion is still dominant the world over. So religion has both perhaps the power and the responsibility to influence certain things. And people are influenced after a great deal. If we look at the three major religions that we have here and across the world, as a matter of fact, we'll see that they have significant elements about some sort of an apocalypse. So the Christian eschatology, based on the writings of a number of prophets and of Jesus, the Messiah himself. And it predicts a period and have a series of events that will end in the war of Armageddon. It also says that there will be a select group of persons that will be saved from the destruction of the world, and they will go to a safe place. And that safe place is called heaven. Many teaching on the end of times say that the final destruction is it and people go away safe. But then there are others that base the reference in Revelation 21 that looks at John's vision of a new heaven and a new earth being established, and we also saw the new Jerusalem coming down. And there's a re-establishment of a connection between God and man. The issue of predictability of this apocalypse is one that you will find some variance on. And there are those that are focused in, or rather a group that are called the dispensational pre-millennialists. And they focus heavily on trying to time this apocalypse, while the post-millennialists and the amillennialists are the ones that say it doesn't matter, it will happen, or it doesn't matter, we fight, we're trying to figure out what the time will be. In Islam, there are very similar tones. Armageddon comes up, the issue of this struggle between good and evil, and that good will triumph is something that is echoed. Some writers say that about 1/3 of the Quran actually refers to this end time. There's a significant emphasis on it. It predicts a day of judgment, that the righteous and the unrighteous will be judged. That day is also referred to as the day of resurrection, which is, I think, the more literal translation of the Arabic words. And then those that are judged righteous go to heaven, and those that are judged as unrighteous go to hell. And then Hinduism is different from the two in that Hinduism looks at time as a cyclic thing. This occurs in cycles. And so the existence of the universe and the existence of humans goes in a cycle. So there's a chapter, Yuga, which basically is a period consisting of 4 different sub-periods that last about 4.3 billion years. And so you have the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. And the important thing to note is that many of the scholars of Hinduism agree that we are now in the Kali Yuga, and more so at the last phase of the Kali Yuga. Right? So we are down towards the end of the last cycle. At the end of the Kali Yuga, they believe that the universe will begin to contract and reverse in time, and we'll have another big bang, and the universe will restart again. In terms of the existence of man, there's also another cycle that occurs, and that's a cycle that is referred to as samsara. And samsara basically says that human existence, or the existence of the soul, is cyclic. You exist as one form, and depending on your actions, when you die, you come back. And it's always repetitive. One of the things to point out in the existence of the universe as a whole is that they believe that as you go through these 4 phases and these 4 cycles, that it moves from a state that is relatively ordered to a state of greater disorder. And that in this Kali Yuga stage, you're going to have great disorder, and human beings being selfish and so on. So, these 3 religions dominate in Guyana. And Guyana becomes a very interesting case study because we seek to chart a very different path for our development. Our path gives a premium to the environment. We have very little data as it relates to the position of the Guyanese people on the environment. We are perhaps assumed to be very ecocentric or more pro-environment, but we don't really have numbers to back it up. And the other thing that really puts Guyana as a very good candidate for this study is the fact that we have a society that is largely religious. So in the 2002 census, 95.7% of the people said that they adhere to some religion or the other, one religion or the other. So you cross here to do this. A little bit larger. If you haven't seen this before, it's easy to get off the Bureau of Statistics website. But there you have it. The proportion of the population represented by the various religions, and they've broken Christianity into various denominations. When you add up Christianity here, the various Christian groups, it adds up to about 57%, 28, almost 29% Hinduism, and Islam, we have 7.3%. But the number I like to focus on more is the fact that it's only 4.3% of the population rather said that they have no religion. So it's a very highly religious society, you would see. So the question that we set out really to try to answer the questions generally surrounding the relationship of this perception, people's perception of this apocalypse, whether or not it was going to happen, and what would be the end of it. Their perception of this apocalypse and how that related to their attitudes and behaviors towards the environment. And so we hypothesize basically that persons who perceive that the world will come to an end and perceive that they're going to exist after they die, after the world comes to an end, in some place other than Earth, will be least likely to have a more positive environmental attitude and behavior, because this world is not my own. I'm just passing through. If you go to a Christian church, you'll know that there was a particular song. So I always like to issue the disclaimer right in front. I introduced Troy Thomas. He's the methodologist. I'll speak lightly on this. So we did a study. We attempted to do this online at first, and it was interesting because somebody hacked the site. We were getting free service. Somebody hacked the site, and eventually we got some of our data, but then people couldn't access the site for a while. We were focusing mainly on persons within the university community. We eventually did the bulk of the work with paper and pencil. Got just over 200 respondents. We looked at 8 first order factors that were selected from the Milfont and Docket 2010 publication looking at environmental attitudes and behavior. So we looked at enjoyment of nature, conservation motivated by anthropocentric concern. We looked at support for interventionist conservation policies, people's perception of the altering of nature, on personal conservation behavior, human dominance over nature, human utilization of nature, and the ecocentric concern. We used a principal component analysis with the Equamax Rotation, where it was needed, and employed this using the SPSS program. And the independent variables that we were using for this study were using the apocalypse, views on the afterlife, religion, religiosity, gender, age, and education. So, to sum up the findings. So first I'm going to describe a bit of what we found in the demographic. What was the sample population like? And then I'm going to get into some of the more influential things about this relationship. So to the top left is just showing how many people did it online, how many people did it in paper. Just a little more than half did it in paper. Like I said, the online system crashed. Male, female, we didn't plan this. We didn't say this one is for male, this one is for female, but we actually got a sample that was half and half, male and female. The one person there didn't say they don't know. The person just didn't answer the question. That's somebody probably looking at a little blue streak and wondering what this is. In terms of the age groups, so we had many of the people falling between age 16 to 25. But everyone, I think, was below 55. In terms of representation of religions, there was a 68% of the population were Christians, said they were Christians. There's 19% that said they were Hindus, 5% Muslim, 1% said they were Hebrew Israelite, and then 7% said we had no religion. I'm very curious about what will turn out of the census that's happening. Well, it should start just in a short while. In terms of education, you recognize that we sample sort of the more educated population. So these are the persons who had something just less than a university degree, but pretty much all of them were also at university time. So their highest qualification reached at the time was pre-university, but they were university students studying. All of the others here were persons with something equivalent to an associate degree, bachelor's degree, and then persons at a master's degree or higher. So relatively well-educated sample. In terms of their religiosity here, we just scored them to see on a scale from, well, they scored themselves on a scale from 1 to 10 about their religiosity. And this is to say how religious they were and who. So we had a lot of people, some here middle, but still higher numbers towards the upper part of the scale than the lower part. And you find the same thing in them responding to how important religion is in their life. And they were saying that religion is very important. In terms of their practice, their religiosity, in attendance, again, we find them going more towards the top of the scale. Something seems stuck in this, I don't know why. But we find them more towards the high end of the scale. And also in terms of their prayer, their involvement in prayer, more towards the top of the scale. So this meant that they were, the ones towards here were saying that they attend, if I remember, sorry, they pray at least once every day. So the other thing that I think we find very interesting is the views of this sample, group of the sample population on the apocalypse. So we had 4 views that were coming. There were those that said nothing will happen. The world will continue to exist. You know, there may be some slight changes that we can notice, but nothing really will happen. Then there are those that say that there will be some sort of a very noticeable change. Right. So I was saying, there were those that would have said there will be no change, so basically no apocalypse, nothing really. Then there are those that said, well, there will be a noticeable change, but then life will regenerate and go on, nothing major, no complete destruction on you.
They're seeing, but they're not getting some.
We'll have to try to deal with it.
All right, you go ahead.
Yeah, so noticeable change, but life will then just continue. So it's not a complete destruction. And then there are those that said there will be a complete destruction. But then, therefore, it's 2 groups. Complete destruction, nothing regenerates afterwards. And then there are those that say there's complete destruction, but then it comes back. Things regenerate. So, the ones here is 90%, are the ones that say that nothing will happen. You see, most people believe something will happen. We will notice that the earth will change. About 50%, 51% of the people actually think that it wouldn't be something that is just catastrophic and everything will be destroyed, but rather that you'll have some sort of a noticeable thing happening, and then life on Earth will regenerate and things will go on. 60% said that you'll have a catastrophic end and nothing will come back. So the Earth will cease to exist entirely, and then 24% said that you'll have this massive catastrophic end. Everything will be destroyed, but then it will come back. Things will regenerate, and the Earth will come in. I thought it would be interesting to look at how the various religions ran in this regard. So, in terms of the doctrine of eschatology within the religions, what they believe about the end of earth and the end of our lives. Interestingly here, 6% of Christians say that nothing will happen. And 44% said that something mild and just noticeable enough, yes, we will see a change, but it wouldn't be catastrophic. 31%, the ones that say it will be catastrophic, but will be renewed. And 19% said total destruction, nothing comes back. In Hinduism, publishing my own self-report, figure I can't see, it seems like something about 12 or 15%. That are saying that you will see, there will be no change, life will just continue. Then we have a huge percentage, somewhere in about 60% or upper 50% there, that are saying that you will have a noticeable change, but nothing catastrophic. And then you just small percentage of the group is really saying it's either complete destruction with nothing coming back, or complete destruction with a renewal. This is it for Muslims. This sort of spread in a very similar way to Christians. And for those who have no religion, generally it's either there's no change, and they're very similar to Hindus when they spread. There's no change, and then there's a noticeable change, but nothing really catastrophic. All right, the beliefs about what will happen after we die. So here we are asking simple questions to, when you have to give an agreement with the statement of which one describes you best. And the statement was about when my current life on earth comes to an end, I will something. And it was either that in the first instance, for number one, that there's no existence afterwards. So 21% of users of life will completely cease to exist on earth. Well, our life as an individual will completely cease to exist. And then 45% of them said that life will exist, but it will be in a different place. Sorry, no. This is a group that said life will exist, but it will come back to Earth, I believe. And then the other 24% here says that life will exist, and it will, life will exist, but in a very different place. And the other two were groups that were saying they don't know, and something else. I just saw a pop those in. But again, interestingly, look at where how the religious groups measure. I'm going to skip over this because I noticed that it's about 40 minutes and we're running tight on that timeline. So this now looks at the attitudes. I thought that I highlight a bit about the attitudes and how the entire population, not breaking down to religious groups, but just the entire population, where they rank on the scale of looking at a 5-point scale, either complete disagreement with a particular construct of environmental attitude and behavior, or with complete agreement. So the first construct was about enjoyment of nature, and they had questions there about, that reflected the individual being able to enjoy what is out there in nature. I'm tempted to use the word creation, but I want a more neutral term, in nature. So their enjoyment. But the score of the population was 4.1, so just about 4, which meant that they agree with this, they're somewhat enjoying it. They're not on the top of the scale, they're not really fanatical about nature and everything, but they're above average, they're not neutral on this. In terms of conservation that's motivated by anthropocentric concerns, it's sort of neutral, sort of the disengaged people. In terms of the support for interventionist conservation policies, 4%, 4.2, so we're going up again with some agreement for this. Altering nature, human dominance over nature. There again, somewhere about neutral. In terms of the personal conservation behavior and the ecocentric concern, so this is more concern for the environment having value of its own, not linked to human beings. They are somewhat in agreement, so it's a positive sign, but then there's nobody on the extreme. And then, in terms of human utilization of nature, they're somewhat disagreeing with this. So this is a very positive outlook in a way, but notice that none of these constructs really tipped over going towards the extreme of complete agreement. All right. So looking for the depth of the interpretation of these data that we got. So in using the factor analysis, we had to eliminate this construct of ecocentric concern because we couldn't extract it as a factor. There are some correlations that were found to exist among the environmental attitude factors, so we have about 46.4% between enjoyment of nature and the support for the interventionist conservation policies, which meant that you can see if somebody chose one, they chose the other, sort of a thing, that you can use one to predict the person's selection of the other. So while there was some correlation, it however was not something that was seen as major enough to eliminate any one of the particular factors. There was significant validity recognized in the items that measured religiosity. So we found that religion significantly predicts views on the apocalypse, which is not a big surprise. Hindus and Muslims are more likely than Christians to say that there will be no significant alterations than to take any other particular position. Those who do not identify with any religion show no significant difference from the Christians on the apocalypse. So those that don't have religion seem to have same apocalyptic perceptions as Christians, and Hindus and Muslims seem to group together. So there was some expansion capacity analysis that was seen in terms of trying to give more definition to that relationship, but it wasn't as significant, it wasn't high enough that we can actually make significant inferences from that. The issue of this connection between religion and apocalyptic view meant that these two factors may not be able to be put into the analysis together because, again, they're predicting one another. But we thought that because there was not significant explanatory value in it, that we could run them both. But then we also ran them together and excluded the other one too. So we ran the analysis with both of them together and then just running it on apocalypse alone. So the least square regression models testing the relationship between attitudes and the environment. Attitudes to the environment and beliefs about the apocalypse and the afterlife. We find that there was, So we also included a test of the effects of religiosity, religion, age, and gender, and education. So how they also affected people's attitudes towards the environment. In terms of the enjoyment of nature, so we found the enjoyment of nature and the alteration of nature are not dependent on any of the variables. So there's no link between those two particular constructs and the factors that we were looking at. There are some variables that predict conservation motivated by anthropocentric concern and the human utilization of nature. But because of the other elements in the analysis, this relationship was perceived as one that should not really exist, but nonetheless it was found. So we have to sort of take it with that pinch of salt that it is something that is a bit of an anomaly. So religious persons are more favorably disposed to support conservation of nature above the economic agenda. So the more religious people are, they are more inclined to support conservation and sort of give in or give up on their economic agendas. Hindus and Muslims are less likely to do this than Christians and those without religion. So again, Christians and those without religion, those who don't have any religion, are seen more inclined to support conservation of nature than the Hindus and Muslims in the study. So one of the things we picked up is that there must be some other important things that can predict these attitudes, but they're not necessarily included in the models. There's no prediction capabilities overall in terms of these particular relationships. So this is something that we have to address in terms of getting more data. We are just 200, aiming for 1,000, at least 500, we are going to do something. So views on the apocalypse and religion are significant predictors of the support for interventionist conservation policies. So compared to those who believe that the earth will be completely destroyed but not renewed, those who believe that there will be significant alteration to life but no complete destruction are more likely to support this interventionist sort of thing. So basically, if they see a bit of hope, then we cling to it. We need to intervene, we need to do something because we can actually make a difference. Those who hold one of the other two views on the apocalypse. So in this case, we're looking at those that see that there's complete destruction, there's some sort of alteration to the earth, show no significant difference in their attitudes when compared to those who believe that the earth will be completely destroyed with no renewal. So perhaps, again, this is the issue. If you believe that the earth will continue, will be here, then you're more inclined to do something. Hindus and Muslims show a lower tendency to support interventionist conservation policies than Christians. The view on the apocalypse, religion, and belief about the afterlife are significant predictors of personal conservation behavior. However, both older people and more religious individuals report a higher level of personal conservation behavior. View on apocalypse, nor belief about the afterlife are significant predictors of the propensity to support human dominance over nature. But religion, however, is a significant predictor. And in this case, we found that Hindus report significantly higher average levels of support for human dominance over nature than Christians, Muslims, and those without any religion. These particular findings, in terms of how persons that adhere to the different religions, these two major religions, are sort of controversial to the traditional thinking. Traditionally, the perception is that, and particularly when you refer to Lynn White, is that Christianity is anthropocentric and with least concern for the environment, and Hinduism is more ecocentric with the greatest concern for the environment. But the findings here seem to suggest a switch around. And one of the things that we're looking at this or thinking about it, there is a hypothesis that suggests that we can explain this if we look at the fact that we sampled a particular class of people. and that perhaps what you have is an inverse relationship as it relates to class. That Christians who are more educated and better off are more inclined to support things that are more ecocentric. They're more inclined to support things related to the environment. But those that are less educated and less well off will be more anthropocentric. And then for Hinduism in particular, that it will be the other way around, that those that are more educated and better off are less inclined to support the environment, and those that are less educated and least well off are the ones that will be more inclined to support. That will require some data to test it. There are some things that sort of support that general notion, but the whole, the fact rather that we found this is something that baffles us still, and we need to take another look at this. So last two slides, 8 slides basically here. So one of the things you recognize that we need a larger data set. That goes without saying. If we will confirm some of these things that we have gotten hints of, we will need to look at it with a larger data. We need to take a look at this, the concept of the ecocentric concern, because that's something we could not test. And that can be something very valuable in sort of evaluating the various religions even, because you would expect to see, it would sort of help with understanding better where Hindus lie, for example, on these different constructs of environmental attitudes. So we need work on higher order environmental factors, so more complex things. And the views on apocalypse, religion, and religiosity basically we found that show some potential for predicting environmental attitudes. And this is positive when we look in fact that also religion influences perception of the apocalypse. So if we look at what existed, and if we look at what was presented in terms of the text, the general eschatology within religions, and how people actually view the apocalypse, we find that there's a difference between what exists in religion and what people practice and who adhere to religion, what they actually perceive for themselves. So there's sort of a rift that needs to be bridged. And related to that in particular, so looking more at the eschatological doctrines and how people are actually taking them on in their personal lives, how they're influenced by them. Because if you can sort of, again, be able to create a greater link between the eschatology of religion, which gives greater hope in those cases, that you will come back in some way, then that you will have people having greater or more positive environmental attitudes. The other thing that needs to be looked at are looking at other doctrines that have an impact on the environment, looking at the integration of religious environmental ethic into religious organizational doctrines. So again, this is looking at what's in the scriptures. All religions have a particular text that they refer to. But then all the religious organizations also have a particular document that is not the text that they refer to. So they have something that sort of is written to establish this particular denomination or church or whatever it is. And it's important to look to see where or not the issues of the environment is actually integrated and highlighted in what the organizations establish themselves. Looking also at the influence of religion and religious leaders over the followers, so whether or not the religion really controls. There's some indications of this, but in terms of where it has a direct link to environmental attitudes, so we can look a bit more at that. There are people that are found, for example, that people who are more religious have better financial management. But we're going to look at this more for the environment. And then the final thing I mentioned here is about being able to do a broad assessment of the Guyanese environmental attitudes and behaviour to set a baseline for where we are as a nation in terms of these environmental attitudes. And that's actually something that I am taking on over the next 12 months. So in another year's time, all goes well. As our grandmother always said, the Lord willing, we can talk about that and where Guyana stands. And with that, I'm claiming a few minutes extra for you. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the floor?
Hey Calvin, I have two questions. One is for the research group. Religion, this issue with religion.
Just one thing. All I'm going to ask is that when you ask a question, because we're one, I don't know if the guys got the link back up, they need a refresh, but when we're going to put this back up on YouTube for persons who want to see it, they may not be able to see everyone. I don't know if you can palm the thing, but if you can identify yourself so you have benefit.
Yeah, so what am I to do?
Just to say who you are, where you're from before.
Yeah, okay, so you hear me. I'm Lensing from Computer Sciences. I have two questions. One is for the research group. I wonder if any thought has gone into how you might deal with reactions that will come back from the religious world, starting from the local community. Because, you know, religion is a sensitive issue, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, you know, people are going to interpret this along different lines. So I wonder if the research group has given thought about I wouldn't want to say the ethical side of it, but perhaps, you know, potentially scathing kind of. I think the results are very interesting, and relationships that you talk about, I think, perhaps with a wider cross-section, you know, you might stir other things up. So I wonder if the group has thought about how to, because really you're putting yourself out on the limb here, aren't you? By studying two sensitive issues, the environmental issue and how they perhaps interplay with each other. And therefore you are going to get reactions that are different from the thing I study, which nobody really pays attention to, for example. So that's one question. And the second question is, are there other ways to study this? Can you, aside from the survey approach that is being used, have you noticed whether observational kinds of studies across communities, religious groups, or maybe, I mean, I don't think you can experiment with this, but...
You could actually. Well, so answer the first one. Before we actually called to this seminar, we had a discussion. I had a call Troy because when we finished the study, Troy had gone to Belgium already. Priya was making her preparations to do her PhD, and Diane and I were trying to put things together to get over to the US to present what we found. So we had the analysis, but we didn't have quite a meeting of all the minds together to talk about it. But before we sort of put it up, we recognized, we communicated via email and shared it. We recognized that there are things in here that seem controversial to what's conventional. And we try to find our own explanations. The group, as you might recognize, it includes persons who are from all three religions. That's one of the things that, I mean, I'm personally interested, I'll say, in the play of Christianity. And I'm better set to study and understand and influence that circle. But one of the things that I've been trying to do from the time I sought to embark on this line of research was to bring other persons who understand other things and who might be interested in similar questions. And that's where we started approaching Ryan, I spoke with, Priya, I spoke with also. There's a guy who's at EPA now, he's a graduate from our department, who has done a bit of work in terms of Hinduism. So we're trying to get persons on board from here. So that's one thing. So looking at what we found and getting perspectives from persons that were able to contribute to the time, recognizing the controversy that might come up, I was sort of on the had reservations about saying anything about it. But then I had a discussion with Troy in particular because he has better understanding of methodology. My concern, to be honest, was not so much about how people react to the fact that we have found this, but more so how can releasing this impact future work in terms of how people will respond. And after having a discussion about the methodologies and being able to account for this, there's really no concern about that. Nonetheless, I mean, we are challenging in some ways some of the existing ideas and things that might have been accepted for a long time. And we do anticipate that sort of thing, but in terms of it being a deterrent, it is not one that's significant. In terms of studying this in different ways, I mean, the kinds of things that I was talking about in terms of future study require different approaches. So, I mean, I very well do a lot of work just sitting and grabbing text from the various organizations. Each of them, like I said, for the Anglican Church, the Catholic Church, many Pentecostal churches, the Islamic organizations, they all articulate, the leaders, when they articulate particular things that they agree on, they believe in based on what the text says. So it's sort of an extraction from the text. In my denomination, they refer to it as the minutes of the General Assembly. And it's really about the doctrines of the church. And you can spend a lot of time just studying those documents to see whether or not they have any undertones in the environment, whether they extract along with things about righteousness and about sin and death and everything else, whether they extract those elements that the very text has about the environment. So that's one way. The other thing that we're going to likely be doing in the near future to understand particular groups, congregations, and this is from my study of Christian congregations in particular, being able to visit and to listen and to survey the teachings that a particular leader is putting out, and how that, again, that relates to the environment positive. So there are a range of different things that we can do to really inform us on this broad question of how religion is influencing how we act towards the environment and how we perceive the environment. There's one particular religious leader who used to be on television that I know is an anthropocentric person, just because I've listened to many of his sermons. And that's just, I haven't discussed, I haven't written up, but the large portion, the undertones, and when you talk about things of conservation and so on, you hear a very strong negative undertone coming out. That I'm against this is wrong, this is not valid, this is taking away things from people, this is even against law.
Can I ask one more if nobody is going?
Yes.
Jackson, are you go?
We have three major religions in Christianity. I would do also try to form one common. at the things that are common in each one. Because religion, the good and religion and the bad separates us, you know.
There's already an attempt in that. I smile, Diana smiled, because we started in a conference discussion, the very same question comes. There are all these similarities that you will find. Significant amount of similarities. Why don't we just talk about one religion? There's already a religion.
Right.
Yes. That's already really looking at the acceptance of all of the religions as one. So it's not really a new thing. I'm not so sure how well it's working.
Calvin, well, you support biodiversity, so I mean, why do we want oneness? Isn't diversity in itself a healthy state? But anyway, that's a passing comment. I hope this doesn't go on anything. I'm taking liberty.
Yes.
Religion and the environment and Guyana and politics. I'm introducing here for my own questioning the political dimension. I think there are strong, fairly strong correlations between religion, I believe, and political affiliation. I still believe so. Because we vote along racial lines, and if you look at the groups tend to, Hindus tend to be more Hindus and Muslims and Christian, whatever. So I'm kind of questioning whether the numbers there are still significant. The point though, the point is that given that the environmental thing in Guyana has now sort of bubbled up, so it's in our consciousness a little bit more. And because environmental programs are aligned with political orders of the day, and because I believe that groups are still oriented to these political things, I wonder if there is another dimension there that's in politics that's perhaps going to make the story that we're discovering in Guyana one that is a bit unique in the sense of the integration of these different forces really. I don't know if I have thought very clearly about it, but I really think that perhaps the political dimension, because it has roots in the environmental side and then the groups and the religion, which I still see, at least anecdotally, whether there might be something more that can come up, and perhaps explain explain certain relationships. I don't know. You probably don't have to try to answer it now.
I will address it because I was going to say people who I guess know me well enough, I know sometimes they also got a big mouth, so I would say, I've said it many times before, and in my assessment, for example, some of the greatest environmental policy movement there, which is currently the LCDS, my assessment of it is not an environmental outcome. And I've questioned this at various levels before. In my assessment, it's significantly more an economic document than an environmental document. And if you look at the links that you're drawing, maybe it explains, but maybe not. The link that you create between the fact that politics plays significantly with race and religion also because of the link, I think is not really that strongly grounded. The great proportion of our population really are, more than 50% are Indian Guyanese, if you look at Indian ancestry, but it's only a small percentage. In 2002 at least, it's just about 30%, 29% rather, that were actually Hindus, and another 7%. So about 37% were between Hinduism and Islam, right? And also, while Hinduism has some purity to do with ethnicity, Islam has a greater diversity when it comes to ethnicity. So you have to sort of work those numbers in, and you'll find that there's not really a direct link between people's ethnicity and their religion. It's far more complex than that. And I think it's changing over the years. So I think that one, the link more between race and politics, which is not what we're addressing now, is strong. Because I can tell you that link more than with religion, far greater than with religion, because I have personally heard people say, my family born this, and this is where we stay. And this is in the face of the possibility of following not a traditionally established political party, but the possibility of establishing a party that is based on religion. They chose, in that case, they chose race over religion.
Just add to what Dr. Javisar said, there's an interesting piece of history in India. It goes back to 15th century. There were rulers from Mughal kings, emperors, and one of the emperor was Akbar. Probably some of you have heard of him. And he was one of the greatest rulers considered to be a democratic person. And his reign ruled around Pakistan, Bangladesh, and then the entire Indian subcontinent. And he has ruled for about 40 years. During his time, what he did was, he noticed there were various religions in India. Hinduism, Islam, and there were some other minor religions in India. So he called a meeting of group of these religious leaders, not 1 day, 2 days. It continued for years together. And that group had come up with something called a religion called as Deen-e-Ilahi. That is Deen, a religion of God. Something, one religion. It combined everything together, Islam and all these religions. And then some of the people started practicing because emperor had the sole power of controlling the kingdom. But like I told you, he was a democrat. He didn't force anybody to take it up. So a small group of people started practicing it. But it happened only during his time. And it changed over from Akbar to Jahangir, the next emperor. And it's just a piece of history.
Yeah, that's a very interesting piece of history. But I want to take a point up is that the idea of a singular religion, and in terms of what I'm concerned about in particular, which is about religion influencing environmental attitude, I don't think it has a benefit above what we already have. I think if you survey the various religions and do so with sort of an open mind, then you will find that at least within those 3 major world religions, there is significant basis for a more ecocentric approach in our ethics. If we look at what is actually in the text. What we have, however, is that there is a text of the religion, there's what people perceive as in the text of the religion, and then there's what people practice as a religion based on what they perceive. Many people still quote the Bible and say, the Bible says, render your heart and not your garment. And the Bible doesn't say that. It serves a particular purpose to communicate a particular thing, but the Bible doesn't say that. But they perceive it says that because it makes sense. So I think that the idea of getting one religion isn't necessary. It's something I wouldn't even touch. I think what we have is valuable enough. The dynamics of religion and all that stuff, that has a different spirit to what we're taking. I'm not really going to tackle with that. What I'm more interested in is how that religion plays out in a very practical sense, and particularly how it plays out in relation to the environment. Then there are other elements, there are lots of social elements. Matter of fact, the Bible, and I refer a lot to that because I'm not going to do it, but it clearly says that righteousness, or what we consider people being holy into, is not just about staying free from sin and so on, it's about meeting the needs of people that are around. And if you consider yourself to be righteous, and you don't appeal to the people that are around you and meet their needs and deal with those things that are around you, you can never really be righteous. a significant bearing for how we operate as social beings.
This is a very deep topic that's very interesting. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it all. And just trying to clarify some of your conclusions. To know, did you say that your findings were in line with your expected outcomes?
With the hypothesis, to some extent. For some of the constructs, we actually found that people have it. So basically, if you perceive that you will come back and live on Earth, Earth will go on and you will be here, then you are more in favor of acting on behalf of Earth. Which is sort of what we were saying.
Okay, so that's in line with Hinduism?
That, it doesn't really have, I don't know if you would say that
thinking that Hindus are usually very clean, very more like environmentally conscious on a practical level, not so much theoretical, and therefore they are more inclined to be,
more
take care of it.
More ecocentric, more about the environment. There's one explanation that was often within the group that's going to go into the paper that we're finishing up this in the study. And this is simply this, and this is something that's very real. The practice of the religion dictates that there's a connection to the environment. You have to have certain natural elements in your home, in your yard, and so on, in order to practice the religion. But toss the coin into it, and you can buy. And people apparently, while on this first, and this is the insight that we were gotten from having persons in the religion, that people can now buy a lot of those things that you had to before times grow and keep. So it become a bit more commercial in the practice. And therefore this is shifting people away. If you've got enough money to buy it, then you're not as connected to. This is what it's suggesting. You're not as connected to. It might not apply to everyone, but apparently it applies significantly. There's a shift in things. Lots of concrete yards these days from fence to fence. The entire yard is concrete. There's no place, for example, to grow the hibiscus plant or to grow mangoes or anything that is actually a central part of what is the practice of religion. But still a religious practice.
Last question. Maybe you find out, like, here on this research, you find out how religion influences actually the environment. So what would you do with that? You find out what
All right. I like your question. Because that's pretty much where we started from this whole idea. Because I look back at this doctrine of apocalypse. One of the things that we're going to attempt to have start is a dialogue. So like I said, my primary interest, and we want to be able to take on both academically and otherwise, socially, is in Christianity. So I'll speak directly on that. And one of the things we want to start is a dialogue, academic dialogue on these issues. And start off looking at this particular doctrine of the eschatology. And I'll go back to something here. Just so this is the eschatology. This is about the apocalypse, right? The observations you're seeing here for Christianity, matter of fact, for all of them, should not be. If you're adhering to the text of that's written in the scriptures, you should find that Christians are one of these colors. Maybe very few of them in the audience. Hindus are the mother color. And then Muslims, people without religion can get diversity. So that can, but they have probably a little bit more order. There be somewhere, but this spread that you see here should not exist. This perception about what could happen to the earth is clear in the text. It will be destroyed. That's what the thing said. There will be this battle, and this is both for Islam and Christianity. It's clear. It says there will be a battle, there will be this Armageddon, there will be destruction, and there will be a judgment. So people always think, well, nothing will really happen to earth. It shouldn't be. So the thing is, how do you change that? And it's a matter of understanding what's going on. Is it that people don't the doctrine or know the doctrine, and while they say they're part of the religion, they're not really adhering to that particular doctrine. So you have to further understand that particular thing. And then when you understand that, then you understand how you can influence a change. Because if they just don't know the doctrines, then the thing is to teach the doctrines. And one of the things you see in Christianity, Carson, my spiritual mentor, I was going to make this joke, he's gone, I can't make a joke, but he's gone. Dr. Gabriel, I was here earlier. I had a discussion with him and another leader in our group about this particular issue. And one of the things that you find already is that it's a likely thing that because there's so many denominations and they're teaching what they want to teach, is either that people aren't taught the doctrine or they're taught somebody else's interpretation, the one that seems nicer or something of the sort. And so if we then are able to come together and talk about this and agree, not about grouping religions, but rather bring the people that say they get the same religion into greater alignment, that if we come together in agreement on this, we can get people going more to it. There is hope. We will actually, it's going to be destroyed, yes, but we'll actually come back. It's just new heaven, new earth thing. So we will come back if we are in right standing. And with that perception, what we're finding is that if people have that perception, they will be more inclined towards supporting environmental conservation and so on. And that's what we're getting into. But it requires not just this. Like I said, this is just touching the surface to see what's going on, but going deeper and understanding what is quite a bit of social psychology. The idea of how do you get people to change from the position they're at has to do a lot with the influence. What are the points of influence? One of the questions we ask are, is it that people are influenced just by their religion? So that if I understand that my religion says this, I will follow it. Or is it more of a case that if my pastor says it, I will do it? Doesn't matter if the book says it or what. If my leader, if my religious leader says this is what it is, I don't necessarily check it out, I just follow what that says. If that's the point of influence in the community, you need to make sure that those leaders know what is in there and that you're willing to teach what is in there. And then you can create that sort of a change. So one of the things, for example, the risk of stress based on disability, and one of the things we're looking at is the potential of being able to look at where those faults are, where people are missing, where leaders are not. We want to understand one, the power of the leaders. So this is one of the things that I have to, I'm sorry that Dr. Mohammed isn't here, Mohammed, she's a social psychologist on campus. And that's one of the persons generally get to better understand, study to understand actual influence that religious leaders have over their congregations. Because if they have no influence, anyone will do it. That's right. If they can't influence the people that are within the congregations, then there's no point in trying to make a change through them. You have to find a different route. So find the points of influence within the religion and use those points of influence to create a change. And it's not that you're creating a change that is against what the religion is. What you're doing is bringing the persons who adhere to the religion more in line with what the religion is. And that's why I want to work. I cannot work effectively with, well, as effectively with a Muslim congregation and a Hindu congregation or Baha'i or anything else as I can work with a Christian congregation, because I do not have the same understanding. That's why one of the first things I did was talk to Guyana and talk to Priya and talk to Ian Kisu, who's the guy in EPA who's quite versed in what Hinduism says about the environment, and to try to get them on board. When we understand, when we do these kinds of broad studies, and we understand particular things existing within the individual religions, that they can then potentially undertake the action, the greater understanding of the group, and have the kind of impact that one can in terms of the environment.
When that group, because each like Christianity, they have several denominations, each denomination having their doctrines. So like how you go about trying to align it?
You're not observing this. You ever take the same thing and do anything that's easy? Anything that's going to have to create a kind of change is going to be difficult. The point of levels raising about people facing challenges is going to happen. But it's a matter of recognizing and being able to understand how you can overcome it. have to stop. I'm presuming there are no other questions.
If there is any other question, like this government, for example, presentation on religion, apocalypse, and thank you all for coming.
One of the things, if I may, and when the invitation went up, we said we wanted to have a quick meet of persons who might be interested in this research group. So we ran a lot later than I initially received, about 20 minutes beyond the 250 first estimate. But if you have a few minutes and you're interested, we can just have a quick chat, maybe about 10 minutes, about, we have the room until 3, but I know people have to go out places. So we have about 10 minutes, we can talk about sort of how we can work together. So if you're interested in the research group, just stick around, 10 minutes, we have a quick chat. Thank you very much.